I believe that there's two of us. There's the guy or gal that is, and the one that could be, and who God meant us to be, and to get from here to here, it's a lot of personal growth. And a lot of people think personal growth is just listening to podcasts and reading books and working on yourself and, having goals, but it's so much more than that. And it usually the personal growth it's painful sometimes, it stretches you to get to a new level. And so the adversity, when we get it, I feel like you said, it is a gift, and God's not going to give me anything that's too hard that I can't handle. But sometimes it's tough. Like, when you're in the middle of it, you're like, why me? Right? But if, in the wonderful book called Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill says, in every adversity, not some, every adversity, there is a seed of equal or greater benefit than the adversity itself, only if we look for it. So in every adversity, even the toughest things, the loss of a family member, or the sickness, or the heartache of someone betraying you, a lover betraying you, or something. It's those hard things. In it, there is the seed of equal or greater benefit. So from here to here, it doesn't look like this. It looks like failures, heartaches, and
today is a treat because the person I have in front of me, I have admired her from distance and learned and, followed some of the teachings that I've heard from her from the distance. Just so you put it in context, I've heard and listened to her in a stage full of 20,000 people where I sat far, far away. But I still remember that day because of the impact she has. And I am so grateful that she accepted my invite to be with you and share her journey, her wisdom, but more importantly, how she has changed her life and so many people's life around her. So without further ado, I introduce to my mentor, Jaime, and I may pronounce it wrong, Jaime Villalovos, but yeah, here we go. Thank you, Jaime, for coming.
You're welcome. I'm excited to spend some time with you guys today. And I'm, grateful that you asked me to be on. I admire what you're doing right now and how hard you've been working and all that you're doing to help others too. So I'm excited to spend some time together.
Thank you for those kind words. And I think, in the company we worked, there were many examples, like it was full of examples, such great leaders. But when it came to women leaders, there were people that you could count in fingers, yourself, Penny, and that is why I'm so excited, like you being the example for the women that you can do it. Like you don't have to sit and just take your family, which is important. And right. I'm not diminishing that aspect, but, you can change those whispers into roars just like you did. So, without ado, let's get into your journey. If you can share a little bit about your journey so people know,
my story,
where you came from and how you became Jaime.
Okay. Well, for those that probably have not been introduced to me before, my background was I grew up in a very tiny little town in northeastern Montana, which, just to give you an idea, it's more of like a village. It was 225 people was the population, not 225,000, like 225.
Wow.
So yeah, little tiny farming community. My parents actually grew up in California, and right when I was born, they did not want to raise me in the city, so they moved to this little town. And I'm grateful I grew up out there. I went through a little K through 12 school. My graduating class was 18 people, and I think we all graduated. But so I'm grateful for that education. But growing up, I was very poor. I was the oldest of 6 kids in my household, and I wanted to do something more than just, live in that little community. And, most of the women, there was no jobs for women. There was no opportunity for women. And so you pretty much just married a a farmer and, you raise kids, which again, nothing wrong with that, but it's not what I wanted because I saw my parents struggle. I saw them argue about which bill can we pay this month? And there was always financial struggles. There was times that we couldn't afford to pay for heat in the house. And if you guys know Northeastern Montana, it's like Alaska. So I'd wake up sometimes in the winter and see my breath and we just couldn't afford maybe heat or sometimes food. And I hated that struggle all the time, and the unhappiness that it bred. And so I grew up again poor on food stamps and welfare. So I knew that there was no money for college. So I just figured, okay, I'll work hard, graduate high school. And afterwards I moved out to California with the idea of working, getting a job and paying my way through college. And then also with the idea of hopefully, being able to help my family back home, help my younger siblings, be an example to them, and help my parents to retire and those things. And then around that time, the youngest siblings had been born. There was twins, and my stepmom became very ill, and she was having multiple surgeries, and again feeling like responsibility to help my family. So that's kind of where I came out to California, and I started working at different jobs, pretty much where I could walk to at first. I had a few different jobs, working very hard to be able to save money to buy a car to get a decent job, and I started working in a health club. And I thought that would be like an easy, no-brainer type of job. Also I thought it'd be a positive environment, people trying to improve themselves, get healthier. And I realized very quickly that it wasn't that. It was very much a salesy kind of a high pressure type environment. But I got promoted quickly to management. And with that, I had to go less and less to school because my schedule was such long hours. But I started making good money. I started making more money than all of my friends. I was at 20 years old, making about $70,000 a year. And again, I thought it was kind of an easier job, just a lot of hours and a lot of pressure to perform. But after about 4.5 years, I don't know if any of you guys feel this way, but I had hit an income ceiling and I couldn't make any more money. I again, been there 4.5 years, but I looked at my supervisors and people that had been there 14 years, and they didn't make much more than I did. Some of them I made more than them. And so I kind of started to get this feeling like there's no light at the end of this tunnel. No matter how hard I work, it's not going to get much better. You know what I mean? And I also, and maybe you guys can relate to this, but I also felt like I was wasting my life because I would get up and I would go to work and I would do the same thing every day. Day in and day out. It didn't look much different than the day before. And so I had stopped learning. I had stopped growing as a person. And so that made me more and more dissatisfied. I felt like every time I would go into that job that I was, again, wasting my life. And that if I could do something else, something maybe for myself, my own business, something that I could pour my heart into, I could be making more of an impact. I could maybe have more control of my time, be able to do some of the things that I'm passionate about, contribution wise, but also be able to put my family first and have control of my time. And so I knew I wanted more, a better quality of life. I knew that I had more to give. And so again, about 4.5 years in, I just was like, you know what, there has to be something better. And so I started looking like into real estate and other businesses and realized that really wasn't for me. I didn't want to be in a commission only type thing where there was a lot of things outside of my control, but I did want to have my own business. And luckily I found the company that I work for today, and it was just a great environment, people trying to improve themselves. I had great coaches like Ed Milet and others that cared about my success and kind of held my hand. And so I was able to kind of part-time start a business and then transition over full-time. And I've been a business owner now for 22 years and it's been great. I couldn't do anything else. So I love it.
That's an amazing story. I mean, when you were saying your initial part of the story, it just took me, like I was listening to your story, but it took me to like movie Cinderella Man, where, the same issues, electricity, the milk, the bills, and a lot of people who do not go through like the adversities or the challenges, I think sometimes those adversities are gift, and like if you don't have it, it sort of robs the life away from you, the things that you can do and
Yeah.
the way you find people. So I'm grateful that you share.
Yeah. There's two
Um,
things there. There's two things. I mean, that adversity is a gift. I believe it's a gift for two reasons. At an early age, I knew what I didn't want. You know what I mean?
mm,
So a lot of times people graduate from college and they haven't had it tough yet. So they're looking for what they want, but they don't know what they don't want.
don't want, yeah.
And so they have to go through all these jobs and experiences to become dissatisfied enough to really figure out, what am I passionate about? What do I want to do with my life? And they've wasted so much time. You know, I do a coaching thing sometimes in the summertime at Pepperdine College, and it's a mentoring, thing. And it has about, 19-year-olds to 24-year-olds, high school
Mm,
and college age. And they get to ask mentors in different fields about their business. And I'll have so many guys that say, well, I just graduated with my accounting degree, but I don't want to be an accountant. Should I go to law school, Jamie? And I'm like, do you want to be a lawyer? So you have to, so that adversity early on for me, it showed me, hey, that this is not what I want. And so I'm willing to pay whatever price it is to have what I do want. Well, let me figure out what that looks like
mm,
and get a clearer picture. The other thing that adversity does is it shapes us to become who we're meant to be. And this is my opinion. I believe that there's two of us. There's the guy or gal that is, and the one that could be, and who God meant us to be, and to get from here to here, it's a lot of personal growth. And a lot of
yeah.
people think personal growth is just listening to podcasts and, reading books and working on yourself and, having goals, but it's so much more than that. And it usually the personal growth it's painful sometimes, it stretches you to
Mm,
get to a new level. And so the adversity, when we get it, I feel like you said, it is a gift. And God's not going to give me anything that's too hard that I can't handle. But sometimes it's tough. Like, when you're in the middle of it, you're like, why me? Right? But if, in the wonderful book called Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill says, in every adversity, not some, every adversity, there is a seed of equal or greater benefit than the adversity itself, only if we look for it. So in every adversity, even the toughest things, the loss of a family member or the sickness or, the heartache of, someone betraying you, a lover betraying you or something, it's those hard things. In it, there is the seed of an equal or greater benefit. So from here to here, it doesn't look like this. It looks like, failures, heartaches. And so a lot of times when we feel adversity or hard things, or we get kind of close to the edge of our comfort zones, human nature is to back off. Oh, that feels hard. That feels painful. I don't want to do that. And so
mm,
what I coach my guys on is when you start to feel uncomfortable, when you start to feel that, oh, I don't want to do this. This doesn't feel good. Your brain should trigger that saying, hey, I got to do more of this. Whatever I'm doing, I got to do more of it. Because right on the other side, that's your comfort zone. Right on the other side of it is the dream, is what you want. It's that new level. And when we get there, you know what? There's another adversity coming. So, that you can't appreciate the good without life handing you the bad too. One time I did a lesson and I handed out yellow Starbursts, right? And I passed around a bowl of yellow Starbursts. I'm like, I brought treats today. Everybody take one. And everybody took one. And I'm going through my lesson on adversity. And then a few minutes later, I passed around the bowl again. I'm like, take another one. And I said, yellow Starburst. Why do they even put them in there? They're gross. No one likes the yellow. You always pick through for the red and the pink and the sweet ones, right? Why do they even put it in there? And it was the bowl was completely yellow. And I said, because that's what life is. It's these trials and these adversities that are gifts to help us grow to who we're meant to become, that we can do the contributions and the wonderful things that we can do with our life. And, but it's not like it's going to come around once. It's going to come around again and it's going to come around again. If we don't learn the lesson from the last one, it's going to come around even harder, the next time. So yes, I agree with you that adversity is for our good.
wow, there was so much gold in there. Like, I was just like, it was just like me getting a master class from you, Jamie. It was so good. In terms of, you mentioned like so many times the young adults, people who are going through, they haven't had yet hit adversity and they don't know what they want to do in their life. So how does somebody who maybe hasn't hit adversity or maybe has chosen a career and gotten comfortable and now is dissatisfied, how does somebody find out what is their passion? Like what can they do in their life that ignites their soul?
Well, I think that's a great question because it doesn't have to be young. It could be anybody that we all get in a comfort zone. You know what I mean? I think that at some point you're going to, I have guys that say, oh, I want to conquer the world. I have these big dreams. But then at like $250,000 or $500,000 income, they stop, they slow down, they plateau. All it is they got to their comfort zone. So even though they told me in the beginning, it's not about the money, Jamie, I have these big dreams and I want to change the world. Well, then if you stopped at $500,000, then it was about the money. Were you lying? No, you just hit a comfort zone and you got comfortable. I have a lady that I coach right now who, when I met her, she was waiting tables. She was a waitress. Now she makes about $600,000 a year. She has 4 little children and she's kind of plateaued a little bit, And so I have to challenge her to think outside of where she's at and what does she really want her life to look like. And so again, I think no matter where you're at, whether you've gone through the adversity or you haven't, you have to dig deep to figure out what do you really, really, really want your life to look like. And so for me, it's not about success. It's about significance. And there's, why settle with just success when you can have significance, when you can make an impact? And so if it's about, well, if I have this, then I'm good. Like if I hit this promotion or if I hit this goal or if I hit this income or if I buy this dream house, I'm done. When you say, there's a finish line or here's my goal or here's the end zone, that means at some point you're going to be finished. I don't want to be finished. I don't want to be a has-been, right? I want to continue to grow personally. And I want to be able to continue to make contributions. So that waitress, I brought her with me to a trip that I did in Uganda to an orphanage that we have there. And, we went on a fun safari, but most of the time we were in this orphanage, hugging these little babies, playing with them, putting stickers all over our faces and feeding them. And watching how little they ate, like corn masa once a day and some tea. And I said, look how much money you make at $500,000, but look how little it takes to change one of these orphans' lives. And, what more do you want? And so when I'm building leaders or I'm training people, I'm not just trying to train them to be successful. Hopefully my goal is to plant seeds of philanthropy and inspire what you really want to do. What do you really want more than anything else out of life, for your family, for your parents, for your children, and for generations, and to plant those seeds of philanthropy and legacy so that they're thinking longer term. So when they hit that 500,000, they say, okay, what do I need to do next to get to the next level? And what they need to do to all those guys is find a mentor, a vision stretcher. Let's call it a vision stretcher instead of a mentor that will constantly be challenging their thinking. Someone that maybe believes in you, cares about you, that you have trust with, but that will challenge your thinking. Like I did with that girl, bringing her to Africa and be like, look what else we can do. Look how much more we can do with our lives than just where we're at. And so I would challenge them to get a good coach, a good, vision stretcher, but also to dig deep. You can't wait for someone else to inspire you. Yeah. You know what I mean? You have to learn to light your own fire under your own butt, right? You can't wait for someone else to do that. So you gotta, I sit down on a regular basis and I say, okay, what do I want long-term? Who's that next version of me? What does she look like? What is she, what contributions is she making? I just recently did a business plan, life plan that goes 100 years after my death.
Wow.
And one of the things that I'm really excited about was just kind of thinking about when my 6-year-old is 18 and then when my 6-year-old's kids are 18 And what I want when my 6-year-olds, 18-year-olds graduating high school, the trip I'm going to take those high school graduates on as a grandparent, Sean and I, with each individual grandchild. Or another thing, we're setting up a trust. This is something I'm really excited about, but I'm setting up a trust right now that for 100 years after I'm dead, generations deep into my posterity, any kids, cousins, any of them that want to do any type of like humanitarian work, service, missions, that this trust will pay for it.
Wow.
And so again, if you're constantly digging deeper, thinking longer term, trying to stretch your own vision and genuinely get yourself excited about the possibilities, then that comfort zone is like, it's not a big deal anymore, man. This is nothing. Like, this is a small thing to a giant, to that person I'm becoming. Come on, this is good. Let's get excited. So I don't know. That's my advice on that.
That was so incredible. It stretched my vision. Like, never heard somebody talk about a vision or a dream 100 years after. Like, so many times we're just thinking so little, so close, like 5 years, 10 years. But thank you for this. This is a gift for me personally, and I'm sure it's for people. You mentioned, surrounding yourself with leaders, and I know working in the company that you work in, it's incredible that it has built that culture, the structure, that you are surrounded by people, but not everybody has that opportunity, and especially in the corporate America, it is not. It's always the rat race, right? So if I'm somebody who's in corporate world and doesn't know how to find those leaders, like who can I go and talk, and how do I do that?
That's a really good question. I am really blessed. I just spent a couple of days with John Maxwell, and I brought a few of my leaders with me. And I told one of the girls, I said, you know how they say it's like some women like sleep their way to the top? I'm like, I was a mentee my way to the top. One of my things I got good at was seeking out and building relationships with solid mentors and being so coachable to them that they wanted to continue to pour into me. And so I was so lucky that, when I joined this particular company that you mentioned, we have incredible leaders. One of them is Ed Milet. Some of your viewers might know Ed from being on social media. But when I started, Ed wasn't on social media, but he was just kind of coming up as an entrepreneur. I remember when he made his first $1 million, and I called him up and I said, Ed, oh my gosh, you did it. You broke that barrier. And he said, Jamie, what are you talking about? You're next, knock it off. Like, it's not a big deal, And so, but Ed's only one of them. There's a ton of others. Jeff, you mentioned Penny, Rich Thaly, who trained Ed, is one of my head coaches. And so, yes, I was very lucky, but I also was seeking out leaders outside my company. And anybody can do this, but, I studied when I started in this business. Remember, I'm 22 years old. I have no leadership skills, management skills. I didn't think anyone was going to listen to me. I was 12. I was 22, but I looked like I was 12. So I had to work on me. My main priority in business right now is building leaders, finding and developing leadership skills in people so that they can go out and change the lives of others and impact lives. But before I could do any of that, I had to become someone that people would be, worth following, worth duplicating. So I had to do so much self-improvement. And so I would seek out mentors. Like, I would study books like Abraham Lincoln or, just different, Napoleon Hill. They could be dead. You know what I mean? And I could still spend a week with them, adopting their mindset. And so I would devour books, and still do, but in my early years, I would listen to audiobooks on tape, like a few a week. My car, I stopped listening to the radio. I stopped watching TV for literally about 5 years. And instead, my car became a university to me on leadership and communication skills. And you know what I mean? And so I had great mentors constantly in my ear. I had turned off, which is harder today because of social media, but I had turned off negatives. I had turned off the news. I didn't have a TV that worked in my house for my first 5 years as an entrepreneur. So I Anybody in corporate America can do that. You can turn off your news. You can unfriend anybody on social media that when you read their stuff, it makes you feel tense, angry, or unhappy. You can unfriend all of them. I do. I only follow things that are supporting my positive mindset to win and have the things that I want for my family. So that's one way. Like I said, turning off the negatives. Where I live here in California, not that far from here, is a really desirable neighborhood that a lot of stars live in. And but it used to be years ago, believe it or not, it was a city dump. It's where they would dump trash, right? And so now it's this amazing place, and right. So before they could develop that community, what's the first thing that you have to do? The first thing you have to do is you have to stop the trucks. All those trucks that are dumping the trash. And so many people are trying to become better, trying to find mentors, but they haven't stopped the negatives from coming in. Napoleon Hill calls it a mind sealed tightly against all negatives. So that might be friends, family that are constantly, just negative. And so I kind of cut my associations down that were not positive, supporting my new goals and dreams, cut out the news, cut out any negatives, and then started pouring in the positive, reinforcing messages. And so that's number one, the books, the audio, stopping the dump trucks of trash that you're allowing into your mind, and then seeking out mentors. And so you might not be in a company that is full of Ed Milet type quality people that love mentoring, but you can still seek that out. You can still follow Ed on social media. You can still follow me. My Instagram is @Jaime.Villalovos, and tons of other wonderful people that will support you in what you're trying to do. And there's tons of things that they offer in low cost classes, online that you can be learning from. But, if you're in your particular field, or the field that you want to excel in, the thing that you want to create this dream life with, then you can seek out the people in your field, or maybe it's leadership, maybe it's communication, maybe it's engineering, whatever it is. You can seek out the people in that niche that you want to get better at, that are good at it. And number two, who are where you want to be. I don't like to really get mentored by people like, let's say they're great in business and they have all this money, but they are getting divorced and they beat their wife. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want them to have similar values as me, and it's where I want to be. If I follow them and I do what they do, I will enjoy what I get by doing what they do. Does that make sense? So you can find those people and start to develop a relationship with them. Maybe you call their assistant and say, what's his favorite thing? Maybe he likes a certain type of cigar, or he likes to take his wife to a certain date night place, and maybe just send him a gift and say, you know what, you've impacted my life. I wanted to send a date night to you and your wife because of just following you on social media has changed my life already. Right. And you start to build a relationship. And I'll tell you, the very successful people that, I'm just telling you, they want to help others. They want to give back. Most of them do. Most of them are very giving that way. They don't want to waste their time though. So don't do that. Just if they give you coaching, implement and appreciate it. Be very grateful for it. And that's what I've done. That's really one of my secrets to my success is I was humble enough to know I know nothing. And I was smart enough to know I got to find out who knows what I don't know. And seek them out and apply it. And then again, go back and show my gratitude and say, what's next, coach?
That's amazing. The seeking out mentorships in your industry, everybody does it. Like I heard Mark Zuckerberg at a time was consulting with Steve Jobs, which one would think they are competitors, but they, Steve would provide advice at a point where Facebook was doing plateau. Actually, Steve helped Mark Zuckerberg. He gave him advice. He told him, he told him to go to India to some ashram and do some, work on himself so he could break through those barriers. But I think that's going to your point that
that's the difference of that's the difference of the high achiever competitor mentality and the world class mentality.
Yes,
the world class, they're still humble enough to say, I don't know everything. There's still someone, if I cool it, that's going to come behind me and pass me up. And I can learn from everyone. Where the high achievers kind of they're making good money and they have success, but they don't necessarily reach the significance that they're meant for because they have an ego.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that I saw, because I was part of the company and then I was also in corporate America, one of the big difference I saw was where in corporate America, people were so worried about having this work-life balance, like there's something to achieve. And in the real entrepreneurial world, I saw there's no balance. It's the mindset thing, right? And I know you are the perfect person using your own life journey, and there are so many other people, like in thousands, that you've seen grow. What would you say to somebody who's just hoping to get some balance, work-life balance?
Yeah, I get that question a lot, especially now. I have my new book coming out that has a lot to do with that. But someone called me recently the balance queen, right? Because I have 4 little kids, teenagers. I have, a multi-million-dollar, business and offices all over the country and charities and all this stuff. They say, how do you do it all, Jaime? And, one of the things I'm doing right now, I'm doing the Happy and Strong workshops to show people, yes, you can have it all without losing it all those things that are important. And so, it's trying to, how do you build the gap between business and happiness? And so I tell you, there really is no such thing as perfect balance. Whoever tells you that they're a liar. Okay. And so chasing that can be very, can be hard on your mental wellness, so instead I say strive for happiness. What makes you happy? And understand that sometimes you're going to be out of balance, like more towards work because you have a big promotion or a big goal that you're trying to achieve. And maybe the next 60 days, you're really going to go all in on trying to make, this thing happen to get your business to the next level. Or there's just, a lot going on that's hard in your business. Sometimes you might be tipped, the scale might be tipped more towards family because maybe someone is in your family sick, a parent is sick, or a teen is going through something rough right now. And so your energy and time is tilted more towards that. And that's okay. That's okay. But I see that men and women alike, they have this kind of distraction going on in their mind. Like, okay, I'm spending more time with my kids right now, but I feel like I'm neglecting my business. Or I'm spending too much time in the office. Am I screwing up my kids? And so, in my new book, I kind of go through all of the practical things that you can put in place to relieve that stress and that distraction in your mind. And then also how to structure your time better. But guys, instead of chasing balance, chase your dream life. Figure out, again, what that second version of you looks like, what he or she's going to accomplish, the difference she's going to make in her life, maybe long-term, like I said, I was talking about, I have a vision, like one of my business plans, I call She Built Champions. Wow. And I said, I'll be on the cover of Forbes or Fortune or whatever. And it's going to say She Built Champions, but it's going to talk about what my kids did, what my grandkids did. You know what I mean? Like, you won't know if you have good kids or if you did a good job there until you see your grandkids. Well, I don't know if I did a good job building leaders until I see what their people that they coach are able to do and change in this world. You know what I'm saying? So again, my goal is to build tons of strong, 6 and 7 figure earners, but again, that have that seed of philanthropy. And hopefully one of them's maybe inspired to help kids with autism. Another's maybe inspired to help kids in third world countries. Another might be inspired to make a difference in the sex trafficking thing that's happening. You know what I mean? I don't care what it is, but that's kind of one of my visions. And so I'm always trying to get better as a leader. I'm always trying to do more, but this vision encompasses my family, my faith. I want to be healthy still because I want to be able to well into my 80s and 90s. I still want to be traveling and doing these different things. So it kind of encompasses faith, family, fitness, and business, and fun, and the things that I want to do with my husband, and so I don't know if that's answering your question, but it's not balance. I'm chasing my dream life. You know what I'm saying? And And that dream life is, and my business plan is, again, all of those things. I have goals for my faith. I have goals for my spiritual growth as a person, my contribution goals, the type of person I want to become. We can always be a little bit better, right? In all these areas. And then my fitness goals are always in there. That's one a lot of entrepreneurs and, employees lack, or they put on the back burner because of other goals, family goals. So as much as I could get excited about a business goal, every night I'm reading my goals before I go to bed. And every morning I'm reading them when I wake up. And so every day, twice a day at minimum, I'm rebalancing my thinking and I'm focused on my vision. Do you see what I'm saying? So I'm kind of hitting all areas and not getting too far off for too long, if that makes sense. So that guilty stuff doesn't happen. And I honestly don't feel the burnout like I see a lot of my competition do.
No, it does make sense. A lot of things that people like, especially, I don't think, in our education system or in the corporate world, we are taught to do goals, the vision. These are the things more on the entrepreneur side of things that we work with leaders. And one of the things I heard, and I don't remember the name of the person, but he said that, we are born for greatness. We are born for service, but we are trained for trading. Like we are not trained to become somebody of significance. And that's where we lose happiness. Like we are not happy because we are just chasing this little dream about making the living.
Money. Yeah.
And you said it perfectly, like chase the significance and it'll go away. You mentioned about a book, which is coming in the spring, you mentioned.
My book? Yeah.
Yes, your book. And I'm excited about it. I cannot wait. When the pre-order comes, I'm going to be one of the first ones that orders not because of, because you are on this show, but because of who you are. And I know how much it can change me. And so talk about, you gave some nuggets, but if you were to pick one lesson that you would leave or you would want your children to read from the entire book, if they forgot everything but got one thing out of that book, what would that be?
Oh gosh, there's so much. It really is. I really love the book, and I think it will help women, men. John Maxwell's now endorsed the book. Ed Milet wrote the foreword for the book. Sean Covey, who's Stephen Covey's son, who wrote like highly, effective teens, the 7 Habits books. They've all endorsed it, and a lot of it's because I think it can really impact the lives of anyone that's wanting to have a better quality of life. And so, how do we dare to dream big? But do it all, because a lot of times people will get to a certain point and they're like, really, is it worth it? Is it worth it? I feel like it's too hard. It's pulling too much away from my family. It's pulling too much away from here. And, and so I go throughout the book, a lot of examples and stories of the hardest things that I went through when I wanted to quit, multiple times. And I'll just tell you, it's okay to be down. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to even be fearful and anxious and wondering, is it worth it? I'll tell you, during COVID, there's so many people because of the unknown, like, gosh, I want more, but what? And so it's okay to even want to quit, but it's not okay to quit. That's it. And that's the difference of, all of these champions that are living these dream lives of travel and, being able to contribute the way they want to in the lives of others, and income and debt free and, these things. And I tell people, as good as you think it is to be completely debt free and have this, life of abundance, it's like 1,000 times better than you imagine. To be able to say, when your dad can't work anymore, here's a check, Dad. Don't worry about it. I got it. Or someone in your family is sick. Don't worry. I have it. Don't worry. We'll get you the best care. To be the go-to person in your family, to become somebody that you're proud of because you did chase a big dream. And so it's all of the champions. They all went through their quitting phases. They all wondered, like, can I do this? Who am I kidding? Yeah. Publishing a book, like, I tell you, in the middle of writing it, I had the thought of like, well, who's going to care? Who's going to read it? You know what I mean? Like, that's that little voice. And so I think in that book, how to conquer those little doubts, those fears, and then make it happen. How do you structure it all? How do you make it happen? But, with my kids, I tell them it's okay. You're going to have the hard things and you're going to have the bad days. I had a son that is in football and he's the best player on his team, but he had a really bad team this year and they didn't even win one game. And their first game, my son was the quarterback and they played a team that was the best team in the league, but they also played up a level. So they played the best team, but the oldest, biggest kids. Wow. And they got worked. It was so bad, right? And my son was a quarterback and they couldn't block these guys. So he was just getting slammed over and over. One kid, he took a flying helmet to helmet and the other kid got ejected from the game. I'm surprised my kid didn't get a concussion. It was horrible. And afterwards, he walks out with ice pack here and an ice pack on his knee, and my husband walked up to him and he said, I've never been more proud of you in my life. Because your attitude was, I'm going to give it all I got every second of this game. You didn't start blaming others that weren't blocking for you. You didn't get mad at the other team. You didn't blame the refs. You had mental toughness of, I'm not going to quit. He played every minute of that game. He was on offense and defense. And, that mentality of to go after it, to give it all you got, and then to become a better version of yourself that's what I want. That's what I want for people. I want to inspire them that there's more. There's more. There's a better quality of life. And you can, if I can do it, I think that's my first chapter is if I can do it, you can do it. If this little girl from Montana who had no money, no leadership skills, no support and no example of success anywhere in my family tree. I've done genealogy, trying to go back, to my ancestors, and no one was successful. And I thought, can I be the one? And I want to tell people, you can be the one. You can be the girl. You can be the guy. You can be the one that changes your family tree forever. You can be the one that now our kids will have a different life than my parents did. I remember my mom called me one day and she said, Jaime, she was emotional. And she said, I wish I was raised the way you're raising your kids. Because you're right. They're not teaching this stuff in school. They're teaching middle of the road, how to be employees, how to go with the status quo. And they're not teaching them how to dream bigger. They're not teaching them and giving them any type of tools to go out and make a difference in the world in a big way. So I hope the book helps, like I said, I hope it helps a lot of people. I know that I'll be having everyone that I'm coaching, reading it right away because I think it will make a difference for them.
No, I am sure it'll make a difference. Everything that you said just makes so much sense. And you brought up, Sean at the very perfect time. I mean, I know a lot of people think, especially when people look at the successful marriage from a distance, they think, they're just lucky. They are made in, their match was made in heaven. And while it may be true, just like everything else, there is so much energy that goes. I don't want to call it effort. It's just energy, right? It goes through. So when it comes to entrepreneurship or maybe life in general, importance of having, there's importance of having the right partner, but how do you build that right partnership, becoming the right partner so you're available in that energy exchange equally?
Yeah, I think for young people that are single, the biggest advice we could give is pick the right partner. So that's going to be the most important decision that you ever make, But then once you do have that partner, your marriage has to come first. And in my Happy and Strong classes, I go into this a lot, that a lot of people, their whole world is their kids. They want to be there for their kids and, give their kids all the opportunities that they never got to have. And I love my kids and they are everything to me, but my kids know that me and Sean, our relationship, that comes first. We love you, but I love dad more, you know. I love you, but you're number two. And I think that gives a lot of confidence and solid foundation for confidence and everything for these children as they're building their lives and they're finding their own way and their path. So we show that to our kids in our actions. Like we do date nights every week. We do family nights every week. We do family outings every month, at least, you know, some type of family day. So they know that family is first. You know, I'll tell my kids, you know, what's more important than you? I don't know. And then Sean will say, is surfing more important than you? Because he loves surfing. They say, no. You know, is mom's phone, because I'm on the phone all the time, right? Is that more important? No, you know? And so I want them to know that even though we are engaged in our business and we love helping families, but they are first, but the marriage is the most. So showing your kids an example of successful marriage is one of the ways that you can help your kids find happiness, pick the right spouse. You know what I mean? If you're a man, treat your daughter the right way so that she knows what to look for when she's finding her spouse, you know? So Sean and I have, again, long-term perspective of that our marriage is not just now. It's not till death do you part. It's going to be for all eternity. So I'm stuck with this guy forever. So the little things that he does that maybe bother me, I got to get over that because I can't change him. I don't want to change him. Think about your partner. The things that probably bug you the most about your partner, you know, maybe they, like with Sean, he jokes all the time. And I'm like, can you just be serious? Right. But that's probably what I fell in love with. You know what I'm saying? So remember those times. Remember the times when you were dating and when you fell in love and, you know, these different things. I constantly read books that will remind me of that time to re-fall in love with him during, you know, that time. And so we date each other, we woo each other, you know, I'm his girlfriend. and so not just his wife. And we make it a priority. We make the time, you know, we schedule it in just like we would schedule in one of our biggest clients. And the kids see that, and hopefully they'll duplicate that in their lives.
Amazing. So one question that came to my mind that some of the viewers who are not as successful, they immediately like what mind does and what mind will do is that, okay, Jamie, you are successful, you're a millionaire, you can afford to have these date nights.
Yeah.
What would you tell them? Them?
Yeah. And a lot of my millennial people that I coach will say something like that because I'll say, I delegate as much as I can. I delegate everything I possibly can except for people. Stay with me because they'll say like, well, you can afford that. You can afford like a housekeeper to come in or whatever. But I did these things when I was broke too. Okay. So we did date nights when we were Sean and I lived in this little tiny 600 square foot apartment, a single apartment where we were eating like noodles, you know what I'm saying? And we had no money. We were 60 grand in debt. We still did our date nights. And you know what? Sometimes it was just going to a movie with, you know, another couple in business with us. Or sometimes it was just hanging out with them, having a good discussion, you know, we made it a priority. You know, we weren't going out to fancy steak and lobster or anything like that. We were just making it a priority to spend time together. We also did something called our partnership meeting. Sean and I are partners in business and in life and in raising our children, and we want to be on the same page. That's where we can get velocity. When one's going this way and one's going that way, we're not in alignment. You can't, you know, the car starts to shake when you push on the gas. So we got to get in alignment with each other. We got to get on the same page. So we do these partnership meetings and we'll talk about, hey, what's going on with the business? How do you think so-and-so's doing? How do you think, you know, the kids are doing? How do you think, you know, what's going on with your mom? And we'll just kind of go through all the facets of our life and just have a little short discussion about it. And we could be, you know, eating popcorn and watching a movie that we already own and we've seen a bunch of times, you know? Yeah. So afterwards. So those date nights don't have to be expensive. When I say family days, it could be a day at the park. Sometimes we'll pack a picnic basket and we'll go to the top of our hill and we'll have a good family discussion up there. And it doesn't cost us anything. It doesn't mean I'm taking them to Disneyland or, all this stuff. That's not what I'm talking about. And so you can do it on a low budget, right? It doesn't have to be this thing. And then as far as delegating, okay, I have this thing that I teach the guys that I coach, and it sounds like a bad word to some people. I think it's a great word, but I say you got to sell out. And sometimes people think of sell out as a negative thing, but I say sell out to this dream life that you want. Get clear in your mind what you want, sell out to it, that you're going to throw your heart into every area of the work that it takes to do this and love it, fall in love with the grind of it, fall in love with the rewards of it and the failures and, all of it. And know that, again, you're getting excited about where you're going instead of kind of staring at where you're at, like, oh my gosh, you're always looking at your problems and they become so big in your face. But if you're, instead of looking at the problem, like let's say a race and you're going over hurdles, instead of looking at the hurdle, it's right in instead you're looking at the finish line back there and you're like, okay, this sucks, but how can I go around it? How can I go under it? Who can I reach out to help me with this? What are my resources? Who's already had this problem and got past it that I could maybe shoot a DM to and just ask a couple questions? And so when I'm saying sell out, when you're in the building phase of this dream life, right? The grind, you can't sell out to a ton of things, meaning you can't have a ton of hobbies during that phase. I travel the world right now. I love it. My husband, Sean, has multiple hobbies, but during that phase, he didn't either. He put up the surfboard for many years and the golf clubs and the everything, right? What we sold out to was faith, family, business, fitness, those 4 areas. And that was it. And so if it didn't fit into those, if it wasn't growing me spiritually or as a human being, if it didn't grow my family or my relationships that were precious to me, if it didn't grow my business, then could I delegate it? Could I delegate it? And you know what? Here's the thing. If I could delegate someone coming into my house and doing the deep cleaning once a month, wasn't that much money. But if I could take that stressor off my plate and now I could pour more of time into my business, guess what? I could now afford it.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? So I hate when people say, oh, I can't afford it, or, it's easy for you, Jamie, you're rich or whatever. No. Use your brain instead of saying I can't to say, how could I afford it? What would have to happen for me to be able to afford a housekeeper to come in or to be able to do that date night? Well, it's one more sale this month or whatever, business that you're in. Okay. Well, if I took that off my plate and I did this, if I didn't have to do laundry, right? So for me, I'd rather, instead of the time I'm at home, instead of be scrubbing a toilet, I would rather be quality time with my children.
It's amazing. It's just becoming resourceful. And I love the reframe that you gave. And just by the way, you're not the only one who loves Sean for his humor. I think a lot of people in the company love him because of the humor he put in and he showed up. I mean, it's in his DNA, like that's who he is. Like,
yeah.
And
it's very lighthearted. You know what I mean? He doesn't take himself too seriously, not light-minded, not goofy, but lighthearted, and always trying to bring a little humor and fun to the grind or whatever the situation is to make it better for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a blessing. It's a blessing. A lot of people, sometimes like I wish when I'm writing social content and all that, like I have to think, okay, how can I bring humor? It doesn't come out naturally. Like so many people, it comes out naturally.
That's his gift. He's witty. I'm like, how did you think of that so fast? Like, that's not me at all.
Yeah. Amazing. One thing that you briefly touched upon, like when I see any relationship or business or whatever you're doing, there is a foundation. And in my mind, or at least in my opinion, it has to be bigger than like its significance, but it's faith, like spirituality. There is, there is an aspect that is bigger than you, that drives you, like that holds you, that keeps you grounded. And I know that I can say that about you and Sean, and because I've heard you talk about that. So, and if people listening to this do not have faith, I mean, I am not trying to say you need to have it. It could be something else for you, but something that is a foundation. But people who believe in faith, like, could you talk about like how faith, having a
I
grounded?
think it's so important. I think you're absolutely right. So, I would never put my faith onto somebody else.
Yes.
Okay. But I do encourage them, if they are someone that's serious, that says, Jamie, I want to do something big. I want to be a 7-figure earner. Will you coach me? That I can't leave that part out because it is such a huge part. It will help them so much. I know it helped me. But when I got into business and I started studying the great ones, right? Success leaves clues. So I started studying the leaders inside and outside of my company that were ultra successful, dead and alive, the greatest leaders that I respected. It was from almost every single one of them, pretty much all of them, it was such a big part that they had faith. Faith is the opposite of fear, that little voice that's telling you can't do it. And when I have faith, it diminishes my fear and I continue and I can keep growing. But if I don't have that, it's much easier for me to get stuck in those comfort zones. Okay. So I teach the Happy and Strong classes. Actually, I have one coming up. I would encourage everybody to do it. It's December 4th, but I'm going to be working with the women. So if women in business, they should be with me. And then Sean will be with the guys of how to create your dream life and how do you, again, build, how do you do it? How do you do it all? But one of the things in there is, you're trying so hard just to get it going. And when you don't have faith, it's like you're missing your superpower, your supercharger, right? But when I got into business, these coaches, like Ed Milet's a great example. I was newer in the business and he was coaching me and he said, Jamie, one of the signs of a leader is that they're growing closer to God. That was his version of it. When I teach the Happy and Strong classes, I have people in there that are Buddhist. I have Jewish, I have Christian, I have Mormon, I have Hindu, I have everybody, right? Yeah. And we touch on that subject, but it's really what it is part of your plan or your goals that you're reading every morning and every night, that you're planting these seeds of greatness in your mind. It can't just be your fitness and your health and your wellness and your business and your money, that your faith or your spiritual growth needs to be part of that. And so I've had, little goals in there of like, well, I just want to be more patient with my children. That's a self-improvement goal that I believe is connected to like who I am spiritually, right? But then I've also had other bigger ones of, maybe reading scriptures every day or something, you know what I mean? So it's just whatever's going to help you become a better version of you in your spiritual growth or self-development goals. So I think that it makes you a better you. And I remember the hardest times in my business, I had to lean on my faith. I just spent this couple of days with John Maxwell and he got really emotional. He was crying. It was actually one of the best meetings, but he started crying and he said, during COVID, he had so many people that were so fearful and their businesses were suffering and their family lives were suffering. You see coming out of COVID, record divorce, record suicide. I have a nurse that I coach and she said, there's no more people with COVID in the hospitals. What I see is attempted suicides daily. And because they're depressed. And so when Maxwell was crying, he said, you guys, I just wish the one thing I could give you is I could just give you my faith. I could give you faith. And I had another gal, one of my 7-figure earners with me. And she said, Jamie, with all the turmoil that's going on and all the distractions, I'm so distracted in business. I'm distracted in my relationship with my spouse and distracted with what's going on in my kids' schools and just everything, right? She's like, how are you so happy and calm still? Or what I like to call happy and strong. That's the name of my book, right? But she's like, how do you have so much peace? And I'm like, it has a lot to do with just having faith that it's all going to work out. So that I never let that be diminished as part of my goals, like faith and, family, fitness, and finance. It all was kind of equally balanced as far as the focus goes, as far as that dream life. So I would encourage everybody just to figure out what they believe in, right? And, sometimes people, they're like, well, I don't know, maybe I grew up with one faith, but I don't really agree with it. Maybe I grew up Catholic, my parents were Catholic, but it doesn't resonate with me when I try to go to mass. That's okay. Take a step back, maybe start to pray, right? Start to seek what to have a stronger connection with God or with spiritual life or whatever. And when you start to focus on it, it'll gravitate towards you and you'll figure out what it is for you. And it will help you, like you said, be more grounded, have more calm, have more peace in your life. When when the world is chaos, you'll be calm.
Yeah. I think a couple of things. One, I know that this can easily continue for hours and hours. Like I can just listen to you and, never run out, and you will not run out of so much wisdom that you have. The second thing is that if this was the last episode I was doing, I would feel like I did do something, I left a significance with this episode. And I know a lot
You're so sweet. Thank you.
people will value. So thank you for this. You mentioned about happy and strong event.
Yeah.
And I would want for people, is that virtual? How do people, find out more about it?
Yeah, I would love, and again, it's part of that vision is to my goal, and it seems very big, but I'm very excited about it. It's to affect and touch 100 million people's lives through the education, the leadership development stuff, the happy and strong courses, touch 100 million lives to help them become happier, more successful, and have a better quality of life. And so the book is a small piece of that. Happy and strong, that's my philosophy, I guess, in business and life. It just is this. You can chase your biggest dreams. You can create your dream life. But success isn't defined necessarily by money. It's when you get there. Let's say you're making millions. What good would it be to be making millions if when you get there, you're divorced or your kids don't want to talk to you? Or you've worked so hard, you've neglected your health, and now you're spending all your money restoring your health. Does that make sense? And so success is reaching your dreams, but being happy and strong. You can sleep at night, and having that strong foundation for your posterity. So, so one thing is the book that will be coming out in the spring. But you can go to the happyandstrong.com website. Or I would just encourage you guys just to follow me on social media, because I'm constantly posting stuff for people that work, that have kids, entrepreneurs, or corporate would be fine with that. Women, men, but that's at Jaime.Villalovos on Instagram, and hopefully, like I said, we can help in some way, some little aspect to improve your quality of life, or inspire you a little bit to get to the next level.
Yeah. And just so everybody listening, right, if you believe in, or even if you don't believe in faith and spirituality, you were listening to this for a reason. You were brought, your clue is to go there, subscribe to Jaime, her work, go to Happy and Strong. Like if you're, if you could attend any event, I can guarantee you it will change your life. I remember, Jaime, one time I had this opportunity, or I was lucky enough that Penny took us to Rich Tholley's house for a training. And
he's the best.
He's amazing.
No one better.
Amazing. Yeah. And this is 15 years ago, okay? During the break, we were just standing, we were having snacks. Rich came, and I didn't know when he came behind me, and he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, you can do good. And I can tell you till this day, I can feel that hand on my shoulder, and that's what a leader does. And that's what I seeing you when I saw you 12, 15 years ago on the stage. I can still remember how I felt because I see that same quality. Like you transformed the life just the way Rich did it for me. And I know the people who would follow you on Instagram or go to Happy and Strong event or buy the book, or somebody who is like really greedy like I am will do everything and transform their lives, because that's what it is. Like you have to hold on to people who are ahead of you and just not make so hard. So I'm so grateful for this. It definitely, for me, it has been such an amazing 1 hour over the top, and I'm sure I'm gonna be listening, and every single minute of it is like gold. It's one of the episodes that will continue and create significance. So thank you so much, Jamie, for
No problem. Enjoyed spending the time with you. And if there's anything I can ever do to help, let me know.
All right. I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I did and got some valuable nuggets out of it. If you liked it, there are other shows you can watch, and they're exactly what you need. And I ask you to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought of the show. Really, I want to hear from you firsthand what you felt, what you liked, what you didn't like. So thank you, and see you around.